Oh, hi, everyone. It's Claudia from the Origsburg Area Free Public Library. Am I in disguise? Well, I'm going to read you a funny little story called Moose-Stache by Margie Palatini. Moose had a problem, a horrible, hairy, prickly problem. It grew right below his nostrils and just above his upper lip. A moose-stache. Moose was in a frizzy tizzy. The moose-stache was completely crimping his style. He was a great puffer, but he could barely bop and hip-hop with a moose-stache going flippity-flop. He was a wonderful chef, but he simply could not flambe his souffle with all of those whiskers in his way. And he was a daring skier, but how could he beat downhill race with the mighty moose-stache blowing in his face? Moose had to do something, and soon. But what? After days and days of much serious thought, Moose got an idea. He crossed some hair here, and he crossed some hair there, and he tied his moose-stache around his neck. A moose scarf seemed to be the ideal answer to his problem. It was so simple, so easy, so perfectly perfect. But then his moose-stache got knotted and mangled and horribly tangled, and those hundreds of hairs still prickled and tickled. Worse, Moose could barely take a breath with all of that moose-stache wrapped around his neck. So Moose untied, unwrapped, unknotted, and gulped some fresh air. He got another idea. He parted some hair this way, he parted some hair that way, and he heaped all that moose-stache on top of his head. A mustachioed antlers seemed to be the ideal answer to his problem. It was so simple, so easy, so perfectly perfect, until a squadron of squirrels and one very nosy gopher moved right into the Moose Motel. They huddled and hoarded, furrowed, and burrowed out. Needless to say, they became quite crowded up there on Moose's head, and heavy and messy, and very, very noisy. The squirrely chitting and chatting, squeals and squawks woke Moose every morning before the crack of dawn, and that gopher was giving the Moose one hairy headache. Moose needed his sleep. He needed his rest. He needed his privacy. Mustachioed antlers? Nuts, said Moose. So he unparted, unpiled, untwisted, and untwined, and said adios to those hairy horns. But now what? What? The miserable Moose took hold of a chunk of hair and wrestled it, then roped it, then tethered, tied, tamed. A moose tail. Now that was so simple. That was so easy. That was not so perfectly perfect. Talk about dizzy do. Moose didn't know if he was coming or going, backward, forward, this way, that. He didn't know which end was which. Moose had to bail on the tail. And so he thought and thought and thought some more, but no other idea was a worthy winner. Braids were a bother, a moose-stache sweater too sweltering. Not. Poor Moose. His problem was truly terrible, unbearable, just downright sad. He felt so alone, he didn't know what else to do. Then, call it fate, call it destiny, it was probably dumb luck. But one day Moose tripped on his moose-stache and just had no time to duck. Oh, pardon me, they both said as they bumped. Then they blinked and they stared and their hearts went thump, thump. She was a moose with a bouffant so bodacious, outrageous. Well, it was just plain big. Hair after hair piled higher than high, a skyscraping dew of glorious curls. A tower with swirling twists and twirls. She was simply splendid, stupendous, absolutely superb. Of course, Moose had to ask, how did she do what she had done to get such a do? Miss Moose winked and then whispered, just a little glue. So she helped him fiercely plunge a hoof into a fat the white gooey goop, and carefully, oh so carefully, they clopped and they plopped. They pasted and they pressed, they coaxed and they curled every truly unruly wayward whisker. Around and around they tweaked and twirled those horrible hairs until Moose's once mangy mess was now a wondrous, wondering, winding wave of marvelous moose mustache. Moose gazed in the mirror and smiled a broad, moosey smile. He was so happy, so glad, just giddy with glee. He looked dashing and handsome. Moose guessed, "Is that really me?" There she is, helping him get fixed. With not a care for one hair, the moose pair boogied and bopped. They skied downhill, even uphill, and their cooking was hot, hot, hot. So, of course, it wasn't long after that Moose and his moose-stache and his beautiful bride fox-trotted and tangoed and waltzed down the aisle. Good hair days, bad hair days, they vowed to love and to cherish. With their hearts heaped with love and their pots filled with goop, they both sighed, "I do glue," and promised never to part. It was so simple, so easy, so perfectly perfect, and it stuck. There they are. They have their own little moose family. It's always good to help someone out. Have a great day. Bye.